So what's happening on Armageddon? I'm so hyped to see GW is finally returning to one of my favorite war zones, the war world of Armageddon. In case you're unaware, GW just announced their next narrative campaign, the 4th War for Armageddon. At least I assume it's going to be the 4th war, given Ghazkull left at the end of the 3rd. So let's go over what we see in the trailer alongside what we know about the factions involved, their current state in the setting, and cover what I think we can expect from this narrative campaign. First off, let's immediately cover the Dread Knight in the room. The Grey Knights are on Armageddon, meaning we can definitely expect a lot of civilian casualties, mostly just for being on a planet with demons on it. Though interestingly enough, I don't think that'll happen this time, mostly due to the fact that the second Imperial faction to join this war zone is the Armageddon Steel Legion. Wait, what? The fucking Space Wolves are here? So, turns out rather than getting a new guard sub-faction like we did for Krieg, we're instead getting an update to our beloved and not at all controversial Space Wolves. Mostly joking. I unironically love the tribal feel they have, and it's why I use a lot of their bits for my custom Indigenous Space Marine chapter. And it's because they're here that I think the Grey Knights might just be on their best behavior. It was the Space Wolves who helped save the people of Armageddon from the Grey Knights in the first place and saw to their evacuation and relocation. Too bad the Grey Knights just ended up exterminating those worlds anyway during the Months of Shame. If it wasn't obvious from how much I love the Bad Out War, I love when the Imperium not only has to fight itself, but when both sides have named characters and are arguably seen in the right. Though to be honest, half of the reason I root for the Grey Knights during the Months of Shame is because they're obviously successors of the Thousand Suns and everyone is just too scared to admit it. A future video on that topic is in the works, by the way, just to give everyone an update. It's also what makes the Months of Shame such an entertaining piece of lore for me. It solidifies the rivalry between Russ and Magnus, even if it ends with the Grey Knights getting wrecked by Santa and his sleigh. But whatever, it's still cool. It's also really interesting to release these guys together, since anyone who knows the lore will immediately think of the possibilities. And given that in the Battle Force box set that's releasing alongside this campaign, we see a Rune Priest alongside the Grey Knight pairing, we can assume some sort of warp-related story. Additionally, 1,000 Suns are involved, so we know for a fact magic is definitely going to be involved. Speaking of my Sandy boys, can I just say, I'm so glad we got the Automata back from the Heresy. Their lore is tied to acting as sentries and defenders of sites of power and importance. I'm going to assume they'll be important when it comes to protecting the North and South Poles. For those unaware, Armageddon's northern and southern poles have now transformed into massive warp rifts, and allow demons to invade freely. Wait a second, that looks familiar. Regardless of GW ripping off their own work, it's a pretty awesome turnout. The idea that these poles have suddenly become mini Eyes of Terror is an interesting idea, and could also explain how new units are being added to the Thousand Suns, Death Guard, and World Eaters armies. Among such units are the awesome Slaughterbound. From what I understand, these guys are effectively a leader variant of the 8-bound, but with the unique exception being they have a fucking Bloodthirster in them. Which I gotta admit is just fucking metal. The Death Guard, meanwhile, got the Lord of Poxes, who, like most of the range, are boring and plague-related. I'm sure someone loves this model, but, to be honest, Morty and his boys are my least favorite legion. Also, he smells and doesn't like magic. Spicy takes aside, this is a really fun lineup and excites me to think of the possibilities beyond that. First off, I'm gonna assume some sort of buddy cop or alliance of convenience between the Wolves and Grey Knights. Potentially, the Grey Knights will arrive first on Armageddon and being the ones on the back foot, with the Space Wolves needing to arrive to save them. My opening thoughts for how the narrative will begin will be the Grey Knights will do battle against Angron himself, who we know has a history on Armageddon. So what I'm imagining here is the Grey Knights and Space Wolves will be forced to team up to defeat Angron, banishing him for 8 days and for the rest of the campaign. With those 8 days acting as a ticking clock for the rest of the campaign and for the Loyalists to secure victory within that period. However, I also think that the climax of the campaign will be Angron arriving anyway, possibly through one of the warp rifts of the North and South Holes, which we also know will play narrative importance because of the existence of the Automata. Additionally, I can also see some fun conflicts between basically everyone else here, since everyone kinda has beef with everyone else. The Death Guard and World Eaters both hate Psychers for their own reasons, while 1,000 Suns and Grey Knights both have a pre-existing rivalry. Throwing in the possibility of them both sharing the same gene seed, and you've got an incredible list of possibilities. Beyond that, and refusing to mention Prospero, the Space Wolves also share their own rivalries with the traitor legions. From the Night of the Wolf between them and the World Eaters, to the Space Wolves' tribalism and shamanistic beliefs contradicting the blunt and anti-psychic practices of the Death Guard. Then you got the Months of Shame I mentioned earlier between the Loyalists, and the certainty of infighting between the forces of chaos, and you've got an insane setup for a great narrative. I'm super excited to see how things play out, and I'm sure you guys all have your own ideas as well. For me, I think we'll see 3 things for sure though. Angron being defeated by a joint force of Space Wolves and Grey Knights, potentially being led by the Old Wolf himself. The Grey Knights need to be saved by the Space Wolves in a climactic brotherly bond. And finally, some sort of major victory as one of the war portals are closed, but a defeat as a second war portal is instead used to resummon Angron. Now, why do I think it'll fail? Well, it's pretty simple. GW is going to be writing a story about it. At least, they're going to be. For those unaware, GW did an open writing submission that was meant to showcase a clash between two characters. A pretty fun idea, but an interesting part of the challenge was that it had to be written to take place on either one of three settings: Nakman, Armageddon, or Kamara. And given the previous campaign involved a Nakman Gauntlet, and this one is set on Armageddon, come out with the prompt itself, I wouldn't be surprised if GW is going to set up a plotline on these three worlds. We also know the Nakman Gauntlet can't officially be lost, given its importance in combining the North and Southern Imperiums. Armageddon, however, doesn't have that much plot armor, and is likely going to end up just like Cadia. I hate to say it, but it's very likely. At least I think so. If you disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments. Overall, this is me just speculating and overthinking all the narrative possibilities from a literal 2-minute ad. And if any of you guys agree or have your own ideas for what this narrative campaign holds, let me know all that as well. Overall though, I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. I've got nothing else to say. Bye.